What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Operators Podcast, episode 43. We're going to talk about public markets. We go through a couple of my favorite brands, what being a public company is like, and then we kind of just devolve into, is TikTok top of funnel? We have some hot takes, and we talk about, I guess at the end, if you're bullish about America for the next 5 years. And you hear us talk about de-dollarization versus what's going to happen in 2024 election. So really all over the place. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Shout out Fulfill, the #1 sponsor, Sendlane, Northbeam, two amazing SaaS tools that I use. I'm a customer of all three. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you later. Operators Podcast, we're in the Slack group. Mike's in crazy shape.
Mike's in ridiculous shape. Mike is like the most under the radar sick shape. He's doing one-on-ones with his team in the gym.
I will tell you a true story. I have not ever hurt myself lifting, and this last week I decided to leg press 500 pounds because I'm just a meathead, and my knee did something it had never done before, and I was a little bit worried I had badly hurt it. But I'm okay. I'm on the mend. But I probably shouldn't be leg pressing 500 pounds, is what I learned.
There is no reason for you to be lifting heavy weights. Zero.
I know. Except for, just wanting to prove to myself. It's like, this is the problem with driven people like us, is that you just can't turn it off. You can't turn off the goal setting and the drive.
Do whatever Jason does, golf, and do whatever Mike does, work out every day, or Matt riding his bike.
A trail run on a mountain bike, and it's awesome. Lots of elevation. That's basically my goal. It's just like try to get as much elevation in as possible, whether I'm on feet or I'm pedaling. Is it just good for
Matt, have you ridden down here in LA? Like the mountain biking in the Santa Monica Mountains out here is really, really nice. When you come out, if you want, I can have some of my guys on my team take you out. You'd love it.
Dude, I'm a fan. I've one of my best friends lives down there, and when I get down, we go mountain bike. So I've actually spent a ton of time in California mountain biking, all the way up into like Kern Valley. Made my way inland for a trip too, just to go find some good stuff. It's not good for my insurance policy, like Keyman Insurance. It's the thing that I just went through the interview process to like get our policy renewed, and the lady, not so. She focused there. We spent some time talking about my extracurricular activities, skiing and mountain biking, and the kind of skiing and mountain biking I do. She's like, that's not great.
Dude, you know what's the worst? Snowmobiling.
Yeah.
Like, so many people die snowmobiling. Don't go snowmobiling, especially by yourself, especially backcountry.
Right there. I think it's called high marking is what they do, Sean. So out here, people die all the time taking their sleds, and they try to like go run way up into the Alpine. And they're always the ones that die in avalanches. Like that's just, it's sad, but it's true.
Porter went on. I was just going to say, Brian went skiing last week, and he sent me a picture. His Apple Watch, can track your miles per hour. He got up to 65 miles per hour going down a hill, and I'm like, no, I'll pass on that.
Oh yeah. It's funny too. Like the interview for the Keyman Insurance, she's like, do you do extreme downhill mountain biking? I'm like, I don't think it's that extreme. Yeah. I'm like, compared to who, lady? Like, what do you think is extreme? Then she describes it. I'm like, oh, then I definitely do something extreme. That's not what you're looking for, but it's true. You always want to
Chad, the popular Twitter account, he does fulfillment. He has his own brand. I think it's called Everything Kitchen, something like that. He broke his femur in 4 places, like the first time skiing, and it was like 2 weeks ago. Like,
it's a stupid sport. Think about it. It's a dumb sport. It's like, I'm going to stick these sticks on your feet, and we're going to send you into terrain that like, it's going to hurt you if you don't know what you're doing.
So Connor and Cam from my team are skiing in Japan right now.
Oh.
And you look at Connor's Twitter later, because there's a video of him coming down the mountain, and just wiping out so massively. And that's exactly why I don't ski anymore. I grew up skiing and all that, but I saw too many people walking around New York City in the winter on crutches. I'm like,
Yeah.
you went skiing.
Yeah, I've broken ribs.
There's like
all of it.
There's a lesson here. I feel like, like one of the things we've talked about is when you're running a business, the most important thing is don't go bankrupt. Don't do that thing that if it goes wrong could just totally blow you up. And I feel like when it comes to like physical fitness and sports, it's the same thing. Like, don't push it that extra 5 or 10% that can get you killed, can get you, blowing up a disc in your back or blowing out your ACL or whatever, because that's forever.
Dude, well, right before we started, Jason was trying to shame me for using an elliptical. I do about
You're not breaking ribs on an elliptical.
Yeah, I do about 15 miles a week on an elliptical. And he's like, I'm going to man shame you. I'm like, dude, I can check my emails on an elliptical. I can watch TikToks on an elliptical. I'm sweating. You go out there on the golf course, Mr. Old Man. The future is now.
Oh, I love it. All right, you guys want to talk public markets today? You want to make this the market episode because there's been a ton of earnings, IPOs with Chip Wilson's new thing. Like, should we just dig in? What do you guys want to do?
Yeah, I love it.
Sean, you posted about Tapestry. So Tapestry is Kate Spade, Coach, that whole thing. They've posted earnings. I don't know. I didn't dig into it, but I saw that they were pretty good. What's your take?
It's a great business. So I'm biased. I'm in the accessories business. I would like Coach and Tapestry to buy us one day. That's kind of one of my exit plans. So I watch them really closely. It's not like one of these breakout darlings. It's not On running, right? They're worth about the same as On, but the business is just so solid. It's bulletproof. Now, they're doing something right now where by the end of the year, they hope to merge or, acquire Capri Holdings, which owns Versace and Michael Kors and something else. The numbers they report on obviously don't reflect that because that hasn't been approved. They're waiting on regulatory approval. They just got approved from China to do that. I mean, the global world now, you need approval from like basically every goddamn market before you can acquire somebody, right? The EU could hold it all up, but China was cool with it. And these numbers they put out, they're very positive, right? Sales weren't up all that much. The sales were like up 5%, 7%, maybe 3% year over year. I have the exact numbers pulled up, but it's a business that just produces net income, right? Like, which we we're in the market of producing net income now. They did $2 billion in top line revenue on the quarter. So it's a behemoth of the business, still very, very Coach focused. And the net income on that, so this is not adjusted EBITDA. This is like a net income number. It's like $300 million, $350 million if you add back their acquisition expenses, because it costs them about $28 million a quarter to try to get regulatory approval to buy stuff. But great fucking business, man. I mean, they don't trade for all that much. They trade for maybe 10x net income, something like that. Probably because there's not a lot of growth, but they do share buybacks, they do dividends. I really like the business and I think it's well run. So that's what I want to talk about.
You just had your, what was that deep value? That was your moment.
I like the stock.
Yeah. Okay. We need to get Sean a Kramer style board where he can have sound effects and he can say, bye. We'll just have a portion of every episode.
The headline I saw is they generated $800 million in free cash flow.
Yeah.
That's wild on $2 billion in revenue.
Dude, their margin profile is incredibly fucking strong. It's up there with the best of them. The real challenge in the business is that like it's still Coach. By the end of the day, it is Coach through and through. They own Kate Spade, which had like declining sales year over year. I think that brand's in a hard spot. And they have Stuart Weitzman, which is their footwear brand, just like does not keep up with the rest of the pack. Like, so that's the challenge. That's why they're going on this acquisition spree and they're hoping to pick up their biggest rival, right? In Michael Kors. This is just it's a mall brand that people will ignore, but does massive fucking revenue. I think you can look at the Tommy Hilfiger roll up is the exact same way. Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. You could look at Gap. You could look at H&M the same way. These are just solid, well-run businesses that have brand. They can get margin and they can deliver net income. And like, that's the game we're in.
Jason, do you think?
Well, and that's always been the game, Sean. I just want to interject and say, like, listen, if the worst thing that could have happened to you if you grew up in ZERP is thinking that was ever not the game. The game is free cash flow. The game is returning money to shareholders. That's how you make money. It's always been the game. It's how capitalism works. There have just been these like punctuated equilibrium bursts where insanity and free helicopter money have made people think differently, that like, oh, it's actually just about convincing somebody else that you're worth a number, or, kind of passing the bag to somebody else. And, if you want to build a strong business, you build a business that generates free cash flow, returns money to shareholders. That's the game.
Yeah, we're looking at their operating income, adding back their acquisition cost is almost $500 million. It's like,
yeah,
if you were a fucking SaaS company, I mean, this is on a quarter, guys. This is on a quarter. It's crazy. It's an amazing, well-run business. So I don't know if it's undervalued or not. It's very hard to value these low growth, like, physical goods companies, but I think it's a well-run and well-executed, good exec team. And Mike's totally right. People lost the script. This is what you should be aspiring for. You're never going to be fucking an on-running, this darling, this like massive growth, Allbirds disaster. This is the best run D2C brand you could find.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I'm like fascinated by, and maybe this is us just getting bigger. We're still growing. I think I mentioned this last episode. We're still growing top line at 35 to 40% this year, but where you really aspire to be is where you can grow 10%, and that's tens of millions of dollars, right? You aspire to where you don't have to grow the percentage rate very, very fast to get a really big nominal number. And that's kind of the story you were just telling about Tapestry, Sean. Like, they can grow operating income by 5%, and that's $25 million in extra operating income in a quarter, right? Like, man, that's where you want to be. You want to be where your nominal numbers are big enough that you don't have to hit insane percentage growth numbers to have a really, really big economic impact.
Jason, why does the market not reward this though? From a market cap, share price, all that. Like, I hear what these guys are saying, but when I look at market caps of these companies, they're not great. Compared, like,
rewarding what? Rewarding margin, rewarding high margin,
free cash flow, and returning, to shareholders. Like, on the surface, this business looks great. $6.6 billion a year, right? And
look, the value of a business is the net present value of all of its future cash flows.
Right.
And so they're making a forecast and they're discounting that back, and you can have a really good business and not be a good stock. Like, look at Shopify.
Right.
Right. And then, there was this conversation, you put it in chat yesterday or the day before, Matt, about margins and how I had mentioned not getting credit. I mean, this is just like what the street says. I talk to people at Jefferies, at JP Morgan, at Citi, and they're all like, you get to 20% plus growth is best in class.
Right.
And so for Mike to be growing 35, 40% at his scale is awesome. It's like awesome. What we did last year was just like stupid. And it's impossible to keep that up. But, if you can be 20+% profit margin and 20+% growth for a consumer brand, you're like in the elite. And the only thing above you are those handful of like pure luxury where, it's just like they're playing their own game.
It's a different animal. To a degree. I mean, like, so Tapestry's market cap is $9.85 billion as of right now on $6.6 billion in top line, with like pretty incredible margin profile. But I suspect that the little over 1x on revenue is more to do with growth rate. Right. So like that future earnings thing that you're mentioning.
Well, they know it's just more certain what the future cash flows look like here.
Right.
I think is what you're saying. As the growth rate slows down, you just have more certainty of what that looks like. But hey, it's a $10 billion business, right? Like $10 billion. And so that's amazing. And there definitely is something in public markets where the unknown tends to be valued more than the known.
I mean, okay, so here, let's flip it around then. So Lululemon, $8.1 billion in revenue and $57 billion in market cap.
But why are we talking about revenue, Matt? Like revenue multiples.
I understand, dude.
Are for high growth software companies that are not making money.
Well, Jason, let's really boil that down between these two companies. Matt, I'm glad you brought up Lululemon.
Yeah, I just
because it is the natural place your head wants to go with this, because Mike said this, that the street values unknown way more than known, right? And the problem with Tapestry is, I sent you guys a screenshot in chat. You can pull it up. Total revenue is up 3% year over year in that business. They have 2 shrinking divisions and they have 1 growing division, right? That's not great. Now, compare that to Lululemon, and I haven't checked the last Lululemon report in a really long time, but they're probably around 35%. So not only is their revenue bigger, their growth is actually there and they're delivering profit. That is when you've captured both ends of the rainbow. Like, not only do you have this growth, you also have this net income, and it leads to these silly valuations. Like, I've brought this up hundreds of times. Lululemon is worth more than Honda. Honda makes millions of cars that are the best cars on fucking earth, and they dominate entire countries' auto markets. And Lululemon makes really nice pants and underwear, right? And they're able to have a bigger market cap because they've got this double end of the rainbow thing, where Tapestry, that's long gone. If you're looking at Tapestry, like, the only way they're going to grow is by buying shit. And I value whatever the future profit I think is going to be. But how long can they keep up $1 billion a year in fucking net income without growing this business? Like, how long before their customers age out or whatever? I think there's a lot to learn between those two tales.
Yeah, that's why I bring them up. And Jason, I hear you on like multiples of revenue and consumer. That's not a thing. But when you look at the market cap of a Lulu with marginally more revenue than Tapestry and like much higher market cap, but if you look at their earnings, it's like their October earnings, which is all I can see, is, $2.2 billion in revenue, 249 million in operating income. So it's like 11.2% operating income, and market cap would actually say that they're valued like a SaaS company.
Yeah, they have 10% more revenue than Tapestry did this quarter, and half the fucking operating income. But the difference is that could be the revenue growth.
Right.
We're deep in 2024 right now, and I actually just sat down with my team. We were going through our production planning and just looking at how far we've come and how integral Fulfill has been to it. I mean, there's no way we could be having this conversation right now. We would be just dead in the water. Fulfill has really changed our business when it comes to managing our stock and our inventory, and on the back of that, being able to do really strong demand planning. And it's funny because I was hearing about in chat another vendor of inventory management software, and we actually onboarded that vendor like the day I started at HexCloud in early 2020, and we never went live with it. It was that bad. So you can make really, really bad decisions in this area. You can literally burn tens of thousands of dollars and not have it work, not have it even ever go live. And we implemented Fulfill at a key time in 2023, and Q4 was a monster for us, and we wouldn't have done it nearly as well without Fulfill. And this 2024 planning that we're finalizing now, our production planning, I just don't know where we would be without it.
Well, Jason, I'll go ahead and say someone in chat is trying to set up NetSuite, and they said, hey, we got quoted 12 months and like $250,000 in setup costs. And no software on earth should ever take that long to set up. I would literally rather quit this industry and go be, I don't know, a farmer. Yeah, barista, then spend 12 months setting up in software. So Fulfill's promise is it won't take 12 months. And Jason's using it. right now to plan 2024? And Jason, just quick ballpark. You think it's going to be 3 or 4 billion this year in sales? Is that what you're planning?
No, but we're going for like high double-digit growth this year.
So another huge year in the HexCloud family, powered by Fulfill.
So we're talking about valuations and how I believe valuations are driven by revenue growth rate and profit margin predominantly. And then there's that third layer, which is if you have some kind of real moat, typically in the consumer space, it's brand. That it makes it just very easy. Lululemon is a perfect example where it's like it's easy to justify the premium in value by saying great company, sales growth is solid, margins are good, and like no one is going to come and eat their lunch because of their brand, because they're a best in class consumer brand, because they're a lifestyle brand. They're an exceptional company. They're an exceptional business. There aren't that many of those, but they are one of them.
Well, I wanted to actually ask then about Chip Wilson's latest thing, which is Amher Sports that just went public. And do you guys see common traits between Lulu and what they have? And then like what's your take on that? I guess that's a group of 3 companies. Markets tend to not reward conglomerates. But like what's your view on Amher? Like I'm just curious what you guys think.
Right. So, I mean, Chip Wilson undoubtedly is the GOAT at building brands because Lululemon is the most valuable brand made in the past 20 years. I mean, 30 years. The only brand more valuable is Nike. So if he does something, you got to watch. Now, you were correct, Matt. The big difference is it's a bunch of brands. I think you said 3. For some reason, I thought it was 5.
It might be more. There's 3 that I know of that I think count. Like there's Arc'teryx, Solomon, and Wilson.
Right. And then I think there was 2 other Chinese brands because it's
Yes.
done in collaboration with China or some Chinese roll up. That's the big difference is it's a bunch of brands, right? He's building a house of brands. And you said markets do not reward conglomerates. They do not. Markets, it's very hard for them to understand how you're going to have these multifaceted focus up until they really understand it. When you're LVMH, when you're P&G, when you're Johnson & Johnson, they really get those ones because those are multi-$100 billion companies.
So Amher's got 11 brands, by the way, 11. So I don't know if you guys are I'm consumers of almost all of them. Like I'm a buyer and user of these products because they're mostly in like outdoor, like mountain sports, right? They own skiing companies. Like they actually own skis, and they own a wheel company called Envy that makes like mountain bike wheels out of carbon. So like they own like very specific. There is definitely like commonality between the 11 brands they own. I just don't know. Like I'm bullish on it as a consumer. But I don't know markets like Jason or you do, Sean, to know how this is going to be received over time.
It's the absolute worst time for an outdoor brand to IPO. That's what I'll tell you. Is that the CEO of REI went on, he put a newsletter out that they're in a recession, and there's a lot of hesitation in the outdoor industry if REI is going to become insolvent in the next year. So it's the worst time ever to IPO as an outdoor brand.
Does that make it the best time ever to buy it?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see what the market does. In 2021, this would have been, I don't know, a $35 billion company or something. Like outdoor was so hot, it would have been a great time. But, Birkenstock went out. It didn't do great. Look, there's a lot of great brands. That's the thing about like, let's strip away public markets. Like a lot of this is like probably tune out theoretical. If you're a brand operator, which is if one of the 100,000 people listening to this podcast, almost all of you are brand operators. That's how big we are now, about 100,000 listeners per episode. You should be looking at these brands as like best in class and like what you could aspire to be, right? There's a bunch of different tales here and a bunch of different stories. Allbirds has no revenue growth and no profit, and they are going to go bankrupt. Tapestry has no growth, but pretty solid profits, expanding margin, and that's worth about $10 billion at scale. Or you can be Lululemon, you could have both, and you could be a once in a generation fucking more valuable than Honda. So there's a lot of different outcomes here, and it's a long game, like Birkenstocks or like Chip Wilson's new thing. Like he's been doing it for fucking 15 years, I think. As soon as they kicked him out of Lululemon, he started working on this. So it's just a long game, a lot of brands, a lot of different outcomes.
I love when you said long game, and this reminds me of something that Matt said a while back, is time in the game. And we were referring to some of those big luxury brands in chat. It's like some of these brands, they have been around a really long time, but they had some catalyst at some point, some not as long ago as we think. And again, going back to the Stanley and the Crocs, and like being around long enough and executing long enough to be able to take advantage of the luck when it comes across your desk, and being able to execute on it. The harder you work, the luckier you get. It's axiomatic in like just about everything.
Do you guys want to hear some funny numbers then on that topic? So in Amher, right, the Arc'teryx is the one that I'm probably a super consumer of. I've got a lot of Arc'teryx shit. I'm mega bullish on Arc'teryx because it's like the Apple of outdoor gear. Most of my hardcore backcountry friends own none of their stuff, but all of my friends with money who kind of like are weekend warriors own all of their shit. So it's like, it's the perfect, like it's Apple. It's the iPhone of outdoor gear. Super expensive, great margin. Founded in 1989. That's one company in that group, right? 1989. Salomon, which I'm sure you guys know Salomon, right? Founded in 1947. That's how long that consumer brand has been around.
They're French, right?
Yep. Yeah. Francois Salomon. Yeah. I think Wilson Sports is like 35 or 40 years old.
Yeah, and it's the only name in tennis. Like, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a collection of best in class assets. It's just, the macro headwind on outdoor is super real, right? Solo did not do fucking good. And you're going to see this reported in any of these outdoor companies. Next week, we get Yeti's earnings, and we'll see what that looks like. There's some inside baseball about, they just bought that bag company. And I talked to the banker, and he's like, yeah, it's a pretty small deal. So the number's not out yet, but the rumor has been that Mr. Inch was like somewhat distressed, and it's probably a pretty low acquisition. So the outdoor industry is a fucking hard industry, boom and bust cycles, like everything else, like software or anything else, except for pans. Apparently, pans are it's a boom 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 cycle. Isn't that right, Jason?
The business may be great, but the public markets do not like durable consumer goods right now. So we're just going to hang out and make money for a while.
So I just want to say one last thing about being in the public market. If you're in the public market, imagine you're on the Titanic and you're like, hey, there's an iceberg. We need to get out of the way. And they're like, well, that will slow us down. We can't do that. Like we'd have to drop our speed and burn fuel and go around it. Obviously, the best thing to do is not hit the fucking iceberg. Public markets don't let you get out of the way sometimes, right? You will speed right into going bankrupt. And that's why you see companies have to boost share price, and they'll take out debt to do a buyback or do a dividend. And it's just, shareholders and stakeholders are different, right? Shareholders are there to make money. Stakeholders are there to run the business. And sometimes they have different outcomes and their visions don't align.
Sean, I don't want you to So number one, we need to talk about the Shopify price increase. I'm just thinking public markets. There's a public company. Sean, I believe you jinxed us, so fuck you. You talked about their price increase like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, saying you'll pay 4 times or whatever you said, and like here it is. So thanks. What's our feeling on this? Sean, do you want to start us off? Mike, what's everybody's thinking? I know it's the topic.
Yeah, I have the least spicy opinion. Mike, go.
Mine's probably the same way. It's that the amount of value that Shopify produces to entrepreneurs relative to the cut of the pie they get is the most disproportional of anything and anyone in the space. And like, they need to find ways to charge more for their product, and this is them doing it. And I would expect that They're going to find more ways, like they have to be careful on the payment processing. If you get too out of line with the market, there's plenty of people that want that business, but I think they should continue to charge more for their product. Like I don't know how big the number would have to be. Here we go. This is Mike petitioning for Shopify to sponsor our podcast. I don't know how big the number would have to be for us to use somebody other than Shopify, but they would have to charge a ton for their product, probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as the annual fee or something before I would say, okay, let's do it. Let's build it ourselves, or let's go use somebody else. It's that good of a product. It's not a perfect product. There's plenty of things that I would still love to see get better, but they've created something that has tremendous value. Just today, I'm talking to a friend. He's got an idea for an e-commerce business, and he's like, how do I learn? I'm like, well, okay, you follow these people on Twitter, here's some podcasts. And then I'm like, you go ahead and you sign up for Shopify. It's like $20 a month, and you start playing with it. And you start learning. I mean, it's just absurd how accessible it is, especially on the low end for what a good product it is. So I think it's smart what they're doing. The other thing that they're doing, and you see this in retailers all the time, is they're just trying to standardize things. Like when you're getting started, there's a lot of one-off deals that the VP of sales cut, at the end of a quarter to get somebody in the door. And then you look at it and you're like, man, we've got some really weird legacy stuff on the books, and you try and standardize all that. And it seems like they're doing that here as well.
Mm-hmm. Sean?
It wasn't a price increase for 99% of people. So there's 4 ways Shopify makes money. Okay. Payment processing. That's very obvious. Payment processing rates for everybody are going up, I think 10 bips, which is probably in line with everything else. That's a very slight increase to basically everybody. Okay. So that is where they actually increased. They have a monthly fee. It is $2,000 a month right now. If you sign a 3-year contract, it's still $2,000 a month. So that did not go up at all. Okay. The third way they make money is apps, right? So it's $2,000 a month, but really it's probably $3,500 a month because there's apps you pay for. They get 33% of that app revenue. So it's a slightly inflated fee for not having a fully complete product out of the box. Okay, whatever. That didn't go up either. The fourth way they make money is a variable fee on transactions. So your store, after, if you're on Plus, you pay $2,000 a month plus a 0.25% of all revenue. Okay. That also did not go up. If you sign the contract, it does not go up. So as of right now, today, my Shopify payments or my Shopify fees are exactly the same as they were yesterday before the price increase. Now, the one caveat is we don't have an answer on this yet. Shopify used to cap how much they could charge you at $40,000 a month. So if you're a very, very big store, which I've had months where that cap has come into play, they will never charge you more than $40,000 in variable fees per month. I don't know if that cap is still there. We'll see if that comes in. That only affects the biggest players. But everyone's freaking out. And look, I call out SaaS all the fucking time if I hate it. Like I am the number one SaaS destroyer. It's like people didn't read the email or don't know what they fucking pay already. I'm like, no, there is 1% of people who were on legacy accounts, very old, older than Ridge's accounts, or negotiated special terms coming over, who didn't pay $2,000 a month or had a lower variable fee. But those are fucking the edge cases. I mean, there's like 3 guys in chat who are like, I've been on Shopify. I was the first customer. And they're trying to get an extra $500 a month from me. I'm like, dude, they haven't raised their prices in 13 years. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So this is just everyone wetting their pants. That's my opinion.
I didn't even know that Shopify raised prices.
Well, they didn't really. It's the Sean's right. If you go into the nuance of it, what they're doing is a big nothing burger for most people. I love that you're so far out of this. It's hilarious. It blew up in a few chats that I'm in, right? People started posting their Shopify rates, and I'm like, is anybody even looking to see if this meaningfully changes their life at all?
I'm going to call one guy out. He's in chat. I'm not going to say his brand name, but Chase was he's like, we got to band together. We got to push back. We got to say no.
Why?
3 weeks ago, he showed me he's paying $70,000 a year for Yapo. I'm like, dude, you want to talk about saving money? I'm like, that'll pay for all of Shopify. Just stop using Yapo. Use Sendlane, sponsor of the Operators podcast. Or just don't have a fucking loyalty program. Anyway.
Yeah. Look, I think what I think, Mike, you hit on is something that I know Toby has been a big believer in for as long as I've known him in this company. Is that they at the core, they believe that they should be creating a significant amount more value than they get to capture. Like that's just a core belief of theirs, right? Like I've sat in a room and talked to him about this, and I don't think that that's changed over time. And I would agree with both of you. I think that for what they actually don't charge enough for the value that they bring to the ecosystem, but I believe that that's actually their goal and their intent is to do that. Now, I also agree with Sean. I think that other players in the ecosystem charge way too much for the value that they bring. And that's what Sean's always talking about. So like, it's not the same thing at all, right? What Shopify does is like incredibly important. It's the rails of our industry.
Yeah, I gotta do math, okay? Because I gotta figure out how much money I put through Shopify. And sorry if you hear me typing and clicking. This is behind the scenes of the Operators
This is what
podcast.
no public math.
I'll make one point as Sean is figuring this number out. The thing that does make Shopify interesting and unique, and I guess in some ways you could argue that platforms like Amazon are like this, but in Shopify, you have brands that are like literally doing hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in sales that are using the exact same thing as like Sally's lemonade stand, that she started last week. And so you have brands just all the way across the spectrum, and pricing a product like that and figuring out how to do that. The fact that in some ways, the amount of value it brings for the cost at the low end is just absurd. Really, it's impossible. And so part of the problem is, how do you price it for brands that are doing big time revenue numbers when you're giving it to somebody else for $20? I think it's one of the problems, but it's also their mission, arming the rebels or whatever, and democratizing e-commerce. They've been so successful at it for that exact reason. They built an amazing platform that anybody who is interested in starting a digital business can get into it and can try it.
Yeah, Mike, it's a great point. And look, I try to be King Solomon in this fucking shit, or King David, whoever the guy was who said you'd cut the baby in half. Try to be as
Solomon. That's Solomon. There you go.
Nice.
You're the Jewish one. You're supposed to know this, Sean. Come on.
Yeah. Whatever, man. There's an argument that they've been too fair across both sides of it. Because yes, you can use it for $20 and you pay the same variable fees that big brands do. And they even capped the variable fee at the top. The most you could give them is $40,000 a month. And I did the math. I gave Shopify somewhere between $150,000 and $400,000 last year. Okay. It's a fuck ton of money. It's a wide range, and it does not include the payment processing piece, right? So this is just the variable fee plus monthly fees plus whatever, right? Not to pick on Klaviyo, but I was giving Klaviyo $140,000 a year, or maybe even more. It's some fucking insane amount of money. And so do you think Klaviyo delivers half the value Shopify delivers? It's no. What percentage of value does it deliver? I don't know, 2%, 5%. It's some insanely low percentage, but everyone else besides Shopify has just tried to crank up dollars. And that's why I was really critical of Tapcart. I said, fuck you, Tapcart. They're trying to take 1% of all GMV that flows through there. And they're it's a success fee like Shopify. No way, dude. Shopify is 0.25% success fee. You think you're 4 times as much as that. So anyway.
I will say I just think, so for full disclosure, I do own Shopify. So I don't want it to I'm not pumping something. I don't think any of us is. I do find that what I find most impressive about what they've done as a company, and what I'm most grateful for, is their entire ecosystem value is truly incredible. If you look at the transaction volume that they power, for sure, the GMV is impressive, and Arm the Rebels and all that stuff, but it's everybody in the ecosystem. You have to add all that up when you look at what Shopify is. You can't just say oh, it's 25 billion in GMV or whatever their number is. It's all of it, right? It's the agencies, it's the SaaS companies, it's the brands, all the freelancers and the contractors, and just look at the 3PLs. the ecosystem value of Shopify is truly nuts relative to how much they capture.
And Matt, I agree with you completely, Matt. I don't own any Shopify stock. So we can talk about Shopify as a business model and why I think it's overvalued and not a good investment. And this is someone who is biased. I'm on the platform. I'd love for it to be free, but I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible that
Sure.
like it has been a good deal this entire time. And dude, at a certain point, they're going to have to justify the valuation. So if they're willing to lock in the same prices now for fucking 3 years, take that, because like it could, if shit turns around and growth slows, they might be like, oh, like imagine there's a change of guard. Fucking Toby loses control of the board. They kick out Harley and somebody else come in. They're like, we should really be charging 10% of GMV. And there's an argument that's fair. So anyway, take the deal. I'll be really honest with you. The cost savings is probably the biggest driver for me. I think I'm going to save like over $100,000 a year switching. And there is nothing I would not do to save $100,000 on SaaS. Like whatever the darkest thing you're thinking, yeah, that's me trying to save money on SaaS. So that's a big driver. And look, I believe in the product. I've seen it. I've seen the demos. People are like, oh, isn't migration going to be a pain in the ass? Yes, that is why I did not migrate in Q4. It's never going to be painless to do one of these things, right? Like I've been on Klaviyo for 10 years. It's gonna take some time and effort to put it in, but Jimmy is the type of guy who's committed to make it as seamless as possible. So I'm very, very excited to switch to Sendlane. They're a startup, man. I think their culture matches mine. I'm excited to be there. So Photoshop a Sendlane logo on my jersey because that's where I'm going, guys.
Love it. Jason, you want to talk TikTok? You're not the person I would ever expect TikTok to come from in our chat.
Yeah.
But I'm just so curious. What do you want to talk about?
Like a couple months ago, I started seeing in Northbeam, I get my daily email from Northbeam, which is what I kind of look at the most now because I'm so busy. My team is in Northbeam all day, and I'm looking at my CPAs across channels and Meta, Google, TikTok, etc. And the TikTok CPAs were high, man. And every time, and YouTube too. Those were the two. And it's my 1 day click there was not pretty. And I remember when I was first learning ecom 4 years ago, and people were like, well, you're losing money on Meta. Look, your 1 day click ROAS is under 1 and you're losing money. Like you should spend a lot less. And that would have killed our business. But I've been just sort of wondering about TikTok and should we spend less there? Should we spend more there? What do we do? We spend so much on Meta. We're looking for other top of funnel opportunities. And we had I thought that our episode on top of funnel was awesome, by the way. And so it just kind of triggered that. So I had lunch with our rep and a few of the people that came in from Austin. They were in town. We went out and they described, and it's a little bit self-serving, but I think I believe it. They described TikTok as a view-through platform. And that if you're really looking at TikTok from a 1 day click perspective, that they're never going to compete with Meta. They're not even trying to compete with Meta. It's a view-through platform. You got to think about it that way, and then to decide how much you're willing to invest there. And on top of that, the thing I thought was interesting, and you guys may know this already, but I bet you Sean does. They're like, TikTok is like becoming a search engine in a lot of ways. So those were really interesting data points. And what for us as an organization, realized that while we're very hands-on with Meta and the team at Meta, because we spend a lot of money there, our TikTok, we're sort of letting an agency do it. And there's only so much we're going to get of like focus out of TikTok and out of our agency for that matter to like really optimally use that platform. And so, yeah, it was a really good meeting. I came away from it saying I need to dig deeper into TikTok. There's all the typical it's a younger demo. It's, this is not for cooking, blah, blah. But I mean, there's a ton of people cooking on Hexlight on TikTok.
Tons.
But that doesn't translate to good, well, notionally good short-term performance on TikTok. And we know we have a long consideration period with our product too, but yeah, it left me wanting to dig into TikTok more and see, and like with us as a pretty big brand, what my expectation from them is that they're going to help us. They're not going to just sell to us. They're going to help us. I find that Amazon and all they want to do is sell to us. Like we don't really matter. We're just someone else. They want us to do their display stuff and everything else. In fact, and I know where Sean's opinion is on that. Another fun fact is that I felt like we were overspending a little bit on Amazon over the last couple months, and we dialed back, and we're like a 9 mer on Amazon for a while, and we dialed back our spend, and we're just at 12, and it really hasn't affected our sales like marginally. Like the marginal bet is a great bet by just reducing that spend. So that's a data point that I thought was interesting lately. And then the TikTok one is like I'm really pumped actually to like I like tackling new initiatives. And so I'm really pumped to dig into TikTok and see, because there's just so much there and there's so many people cooking with it, but it just doesn't translate to good CPAs for us. So I just thought I'd throw that out there for the group and see what people would say about it.
Sean, do you want to start on the TikTok thing? I don't know if I'm just so bearish on the platform right now. I just don't know if I'm the right person, but I've got opinions, but kick it off.
Oh man, I got a lot of opinions about everything. So sorry if I talk too much this episode. This might be one where you just have to put like the Sean block filter on. But what I'll say, Jason, is first, they're like, oh, we're different than Meta. That's bullshit. They're just a worse platform than Meta. There is absolutely no difference between a user on TikTok and a user on Instagram Reels. They're like, they're more likely to shop. No, I think, and there's a lot of data to back this up, that TikTok is overcharging for the ad space that they have. I think they have a smaller user pool than they let on. And the evidence in this is there was a hearing on Israel-Gaza conflict, and TikTok got brought up. And TikTok says they deleted 170 million accounts that were bots spreading misinformation about the war. 170 million accounts. Do you think those accounts got some ads? That's my whole perspective is that 10, 20, 30, 40% of their users could actually not be actually being served ads and they could be bots. So, them being like, we're Criteo, we're different, or, we're a top of funnel platform. That is just bullshit awareness marketing. They want to push their shop is what they want to do. So all of the good ad space, all of the good user attention is going towards their shop. And I think their ad platform is going to get shittier and shittier over time. And you're just fueling their growth initiative, which is their shop thing. So I'm bearish on TikTok as an ad platform. My wife makes a living off TikTok. I think it's a fun social media with good little videos, but I think they've totally screwed everything on the ad platform. Now, organic shop, we can have a separate conversation about that. And I totally agree with what you're saying about Amazon. You can spend less on Amazon. I think almost everybody can. Amazon makes it so fucking hard to use that ad platform. They cram so many different ad spaces. You end up just bidding against yourself. Everyone in here could probably cut their Amazon budget by 30% and get the exact same revenue. Without even looking at your account, I'm telling you, you're overspending by 30%. That is my gut reaction. Mike, you got a call on either one of those?
No, I mean, other than I think I agree in general that there is a breaking point. You have to be driving a lot of freaking utility to just spam people with ads. And Amazon's ability to cram just tons and tons and tons of ads onto their platform is somewhat offset by the fact that they drive so much freaking value with their service. I am not sure that TikTok drives anywhere in the stratosphere of Amazon in terms of value with their product to be able to justify hitting so many ads. And so I don't know. I mean, listen, guys, personally, I get whenever people from a foreign country that starts with C pump a whole bunch of money that you don't know where it came from into fueling really fast growth into something, like I always wonder about the sustainability or the economics or the purposes behind that thing. And, TikTok, there's just a whole bunch we don't know about TikTok and their numbers and their goals and everything else. So can Amazon continue to do it? Sure. Brian and I have been vocal about all the testing we've done around Amazon advertising. And my view on Amazon advertising is that it can be very incremental for you when done correctly and thoughtfully. And that also they're happy to help you light money on fire and move it from your bank account to their bank account. And you got to be intelligent enough to know which is which. And this is one of the reasons why I really advise anybody, hey, you want to use an agency eventually, that's fine. I wouldn't. But in this particular case, you have got to understand how the platform works to even be able to make intelligent decisions, whether you or somebody else is running your ad platform. Because just as a simple example, like brand search on Amazon, we could probably, if we wanted to, with how much keyword volume we drive, we could probably spend $7,000 a day, $10,000 a day on just on branded search terms on Amazon. Now that would be insane. It would be stupid. We would get almost no marginal value out of those dollars, but Amazon would be happy to let us do it, and I'm sure they've got people in there whose jobs are to tell us, oh, your share of impressions on ads on your key terms isn't very good. You're missing out on shoppers. But they release so much data. The thing I respect about Amazon is that they're not opaque. They release so much data to people. And so if you really are willing to get in there in the numbers and look at things, you can optimize your business. And so we've done a lot of that when it comes to Amazon ads. It's our single biggest line item in the business. And we've used, you guys know this, we haven't traditionally spent on anything top of funnel, very little on Meta. We've spent mostly on Amazon ads, and we've grown to over, 200 million in annual sales. So we've done something right. So I think the platform is great. I do get annoyed by the fact that when people get on Amazon and they search for a term, like, I want to see the best product at the top. I don't want to see the 6 products that paid for advertising at the top and then the best product. But, if that's what I have to do to get, to get my toothbrush shipped to me within 3 hours by a drone, I guess I can, I can deal with that.
We've got a lot of operators fans out there, a lot of people using Northbeam. I use it every single day. If you want a higher level of planning and accuracy out of your MTA solution, Northbeam is the tool I use. Jason's on board with their
MMM, MTA. Yeah. What's really cool about having a partner like Northbeam is that I give them feedback and they make changes. Like they change their dashboards based on things that I told them as a C-level exec I care about, to make it be useful to both the media buyer and the senior execs who may not, like, I'm not pulling levers in the ad account. I'm not capable of doing it. Sean is capable, but I hope you're not doing it anymore. I'm sure you're not doing it anymore. Like, the fact that they sort of develop the product in a way that it's actually really useful in different ways to senior people and media buyers, I think is pretty special to have a partner like that.
I want to go back to the TikTok thing. I think, Mike, like, yeah, we've your experience on Amazon. I would agree on everything Amazon. I hate spending ad dollars there. It's just shitty demand capture. The demand exists. They're searching for your brand. Don't spend money there, or spend less. So totally agree with you and Sean on that. TikTok. So I've been trying to take a bullish case because, Sean, I'm usually with you on this. I'm pretty bearish on the platform. The only bullish case I can come up with for TikTok long term is by comparing it to YouTube's journey to where it is today, right? And so to me, this all comes down to like quality of ad platform, quality of user, and trust.
How do you see the China angle with TikTok?
So I was talking to a guy last night who's friends with some red shirts, some Chinese Communist Party members, right? And I mean, so this is 3 degrees of separation. So he's a guy who lives in China who's telling me about hanging out with Chinese Communist members. He was doing some consulting for us, and I was just like, "Hey, man, what do you think about China?" And he's like, "Look, they know everyone from Xi all the way down to normal Party members know that it's going to be a horrible 10 years, right? But like China really cares about China. They really care about, the next 100 years, and they really just want a unified, isolated China. So do I think TikTok is some sort of super weapon released to like, brain rot American youth? No, not at all. I think it's,
we do that on our own. We don't need them now.
Yeah.
No.
No. I don't think the Chinese government has any, I mean, they have sway over the financials and direction of the company. I don't think they're like picking algorithm or content, because it's like, dude, imagine fucking Joe Biden doing that over an app. Like, the government is inept in every form across the entire world. What I think is happening is all assets that are, I think that we'll see a public. I think all companies in China will be seized by the government to pay back and fix this amazing, horrible real estate crash that is happening in China. I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that says the commercial real estate bubble in America is the worst since the great financial crisis, and $500 billion of debt just went bankrupt in China, like Evergrande and another big fucking real estate developer. So it is, horrible reporting by the Wall Street Journal, because obviously that is the biggest crash humans have ever seen ever. Like, this is Enron times 5, and it's happening in China as we speak right now. So, dude, I think they got bigger problems. I think they totally give up on any sort of world dominance and control. I think they strike a deal with America to take back Taiwan in 10 years. And we see a back down and a tighter China than we've seen in the past. I think expansionist China is totally gone.
I think, Sean, I agree. I don't think China's a factor in the TikTok thing. I think, Jason, for you, I'll focus specifically on you, right? Like, from a top of funnel, where your brand is at with the growth that you've had and the size that you are. The question I would ask on TikTok or no TikTok from an investment or focus is simply, yes, all ages are on the platform. There's no question. But the question I would be asking is, of all the ages and demos and psychographics that are on TikTok, are the ones that you want to reach that have the disposable income to buy your product, do they trust a hex-clad piece of content on TikTok more than they do something else? So, like, should you spend $10 million on TikTok, or should you spend $10 million on television at a national level? That's how I would, at your scale, that's how I would be evaluating effort on the platform.
Well, I'm going to go dig into my Northbeam MMM data and see what it tells me. And yeah, we're gonna keep doing our homework on this, but I definitely hear everything that you guys are saying, and like I said, it's a very convenient pitch on their part, but I do believe like the TikTok platform is sort of very TV-esque in, like, you're talking about how
I would
people
agree.
sit there for 6 hours watching that shit, but like,
Yep.
there's plenty of people who sit around watching TV and playing video games for hours and hours and hours.
Look, they've been consistent with that, Jason.
Doesn't mean that I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Look, man, they've been, where I'll give TikTok their credit is they've been consistent with that. We're not a check platform. We're an I watch platform. So, like, and they've been saying that before their ad platform came out, that like they model themselves after television. That's how they view their usage. Whereas like Instagram pre-reels, Facebook pre-vertical video, before they just copy TikTok, was I check my social apps. So that they've been consistent with, and I'll give them that like people do use TikTok as like a TV alternative. Although it's funny, like most kids I see using TikTok are using it while watching TV.
There's a report that came out that Netflix is canceling shows that are too engaging because they want it to be just in the background. And like, if the show is watched too much, people would turn it off. That's a real report that came out.
I don't know if I believe that more than the China thing.
Then like, so something that really opened my eyes was when I heard that countries don't have allies, they have interests, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look into what these like fundings for Israel or Ukraine go to, because you hear about foreign aid, you're like, why the fuck are we giving Ukraine $100 billion? It's so much money. But when you look at the bill, it's all going to Boeing to buy planes. Like, and when you dive into this, it's like, oh, we're just paying for a manufacturing industry.
We're
Like
injecting money back into our own economy is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just taxpayer dollars to, favorite industries or whatever. And once you start seeing that, you're like, oh, like we aren't allies with anybody. It's just we have interests. And Jason brought up Tiananmen Square, and you could bring up Ruby Ridge. It's like every country does shit to stay in power, stay in control. The counter is everything you said is totally I think you were totally right in 2021. It's like the Ukraine war, Russia asserting power, like this attack in Gaza, this attack in Iran. When I was texting Connor, I'm like, either America is at its absolute peak and our enemies are scared, or we're at our absolute weakest and they think this is the time to strike. There's no in between. Either we're super fucking strong and they're panicking, or we're super weak and they're like, and now's a great opportunity. Now that we're in 2024 and we see how things play out, I'm like, oh, it's actually we're at our strongest, right? You could fucking forget about the president, forget about whatever else. We're posting amazing GDP growth, more than developing countries, more than China for the first time ever. And we're a robust economy. We're pumping out more oil than ever before. If you just look at the playing field, nowhere else I'd rather be. And you talk about BRICS countries or whatever, they're still trying to get dollars. It's like we're the only stable ship left across all this. So I feel super good about America for the next 20 years, 30 years, but I do think it's the end of globalization. I do think we're going to see more iceless countries. We're going to see more state-run enterprises, and whatever, we'll just stop fucking patrolling the oceans and we'll just get all our stuff made in Mexico. And I think that's the next 30 years and we still win, which feels good.
Yeah. I mean, we're the strong hand in this, in the current geopolitical setup. And so I think a couple of things that build off what you're saying. One is the complexity of the world has gone up so much that it's almost impossible to predict how a particular event will impact and spiderweb its way out. So, who does Russia want to win? Who does China want to win this election? I don't know. I mean, they might have internally, we'd kind of rather it be this candidate than this candidate, or this party than this party. But no matter who it is, I have no idea how it'll go for those relationships because it's complicated. There's just too many variables. There's too many things to be able to predict. And so in some ways, the complexity, and a lot of this is driven by our technology, the complexity of the world that we're living in, it's hard for anybody. Like the people that are like, oh, it's all a plan and there's Illuminati and there's, people there's puppet masters. It's like, guys, you're fundamentally misunderstanding. The system is so complex that nobody is in control of what's going on. And that's kind of the terrifying thing. And maybe that's also the check that's in place, is that it doesn't matter how much technology or how much money you have. The world is too complex to control anything. We're all reacting to things. And in some ways that keeps things in balance, is that as countries continue to become more nationalistic and more isolated, that's going to have interesting second and third order effects that we can't predict right now. I do think the nationalism bet's an easy one. The immigration thing is an issue, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. If you look even Biden got on his Twitter and is like, the border is a problem. So, whether it's political theater or whatever, across the spectrum in the United States, it's like, wow, we've got a real problem with our border. And if you look at Europe and some of the things going on in Europe, they're saying similar things. I think that's going to continue to drive nationalism. We just don't know how that's going to impact the world. But like you're saying, Sean, hey, you could look at this like a butterfly effect. 10 years from now, we could say, yeah, Iran threw some money at the Houthis and they took over a bunch of ships in the Red Sea. And that's why America now has a thriving semiconductor industry. And it could be true, nobody knows. And so I think that that's the thing that's both interesting and a little bit scary about the world that we live in, is trying to figure out what's going to happen. Is that it's impossible. It felt like 10 or 15 years ago. I saw somebody say this on Twitter and I completely agreed. 10 or 15 years ago, you could kind of look at the board and at least have a guess at what was going to happen over the next 3, 4, 5 years. Do you have any idea what the world's going to look like in 2030? I don't think I do. Right. I mean, it's the Vision Pro just came out. Are 30% of people going to be wearing goggles around all the time and just permanently in VR? I mean, you could show me a bunch of different versions of 5 years from now that would probably seem believable to me. So maybe the big question is, when you're running a business and you're living in a world that has that much complexity and that much unknown, how do you handle it? What do you do?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the future could go a bunch of different ways. And going back to the countries don't have allies, they have interests. If you're Russia or you're Iran, you really want Donald Trump to be president, because Donald Trump, day one, is going to make a peace deal in Ukraine and take NATO off the table. But if you're China, you want Joe Biden, because Trump's coming in. He's like, I'm going to fucking put 60% tariffs on you and I'm going to nuke you over fucking Taiwan. So like this axis of resistance or whatever is going to fall apart. Right. Or yeah, if you're Iran, you actually want Biden because Trump's going to come and he's going to make peace with Israel. Right. Like he will get Saudi Arabia to fucking recognize him or whatever. And it is so unstable. And you see that side of the board looking worse and worse over time. So, we don't have to dive into the immigration thing, because I think I'm going to have pretty unorthodox views about what's going to happen. But what I will say is, right now, looking forward 5 years, I feel the best about being in America than I've ever felt. I felt really sketched out in 2020, 2021, 2022. And looking now and like the rest of the board, I'm like, Europe seems super fucked. The only other place on earth I'd rather be is fucking Latin America, and it's still here. So like this is the place to be thriving, I think, North and South America.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground. I think I have no idea what the actual episode we just recorded will look like by the time it's done. But if you joined us, thanks for being with us and on this journey through geopolitical public markets. And we all eagerly await Sean's controversial takes on immigration next week.